Let's take a look at BeautifulSoup4. BeautifulSoup4 is the library that we talked about for scraping the page, for actually taking the HTML from the page and finding our content on it. To use it, we need to import it. But before that, we will import requests, because requests is our main library for dealing with HTTP requests and responses. And then we import from BS4, we import the BeautifulSoup object definition, class definition. So we have that stuff here, and we're going to scrape this page on in Epicurious. All right. So again, we did this last week, but let me just walk through this very quickly again. When we look at a web page, for example, epicurious.com, and we want to find something, we go to the find a recipe over here and type tofu chili, and that's what we're looking for, chili made with tofu in it, vegan chili, so to speak. We get a page that looks like this, and more importantly, when we look at the URL, we notice that the URL contains tofu and chili. It contains the words tofu and chili inside it, with a %20 in the middle. The %20 indicates that there's a space in the middle. And so what's happened is that the data that we entered in an input box on this page over here is now included in the HTTP request that went to the server. And we can see it over there. So now if I want to get the recipes on anything in Epicurious, I don't technically have to go and enter the search box. There's no need to do that even on my browser. I could replace tofu chili by, let's say, beef chili, and I get a bunch of beef chili stuff, right? So rather than having to go to the home page of Epicurious, type in the keywords, I can actually go directly to that URL. So for now, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go directly to the URL, and later we'll see how to input the stuff in. But for now, we can go directly to the URL and get our stuff there. So here we go to this URL, and then of course we have our request response cycle. So we use request.get with the URL to get the response. And once we get the response, and we should technically be checking to see whether the status was okay or not, the content was there or not, all that kind of stuff. But assuming that that worked, then we can go and construct a BeautifulSoup object, give it the content of the response, which is the HTML, and tell it the parser that we're going to use. BeautifulSoup essentially uses two main parsers, LXML, which is a fast parser, which is similar to the XML parser we saw last week, and HTML5lib, which is a little bit slower, but is also a useful one. We'll see in some cases HTML5lib may be necessary. And once we got that, we have a BeautifulSoup object, and we can see what it looks like by looking at the structure of that stuff. So let's take a look at it and see how that works. So here we've got our two imports, import requests, and from BS4 import BeautifulSoup. We've got our tofu chili. I don't need the %20, because if you recall again, what the request objects does, what the request library does is, if you have a space, it'll put in the %20 for us. So we can construct a URL, which is not a valid URL because it's got a space, but request will handle that. And then we do the request.get URL, and we check the status code and make sure that it actually works. And it says, yes, that worked, right? We got a 200. So we can generalize this. So what I'll do here is I'll write an input statement where we can enter whatever keywords we want, and then see if that works. So let's take a look at that. So let's say I want lamb chops. I got something back, right? So that worked fine. I can take that page. So we've got our response here, and the response contains the entire response, the status code, the content, whatever else comes back in the HTTP response. And from there, we know that the content actually contains the data that we want. So I can construct a BeautifulSoup object and then print it. So the prettify function over here will just make it look nice, so that you'll see in a second. And this is what we get back here. It tells us this is what we're getting back in our content. And we can see this is HTML, right? We've got here the open HTML tag. There's a header. There's lots of stuff over here. And there's some junk here. And we can actually check and see whether what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and run this with tofu chili. mainly because I know what I'm looking for there. I'll do tofu, chili, and then run this, and inside here I'm going to look for, say, noodles. So we get here, we can see that one of the things we've got back is recipes, food views, Chinese egg noodles with smoked duck and snow peas. It's not exactly vegan, but you know, egg noodles, but with duck and all that. But still, it's probably got tofu as well in it. So we got that result back. So that's the URL to the recipe itself, right? And we can see that in our page. If I go back to epicurious.com and look here, if I do we see that we've got spicy lemongrass tofu. There's some articles and stuff which we're not interested in, and there's Chinese egg noodles with smoked duck and snow peas, which we can then click on, and it'll pull out the actual page for us. So that's the basic process. Now we have an HTML stuff, but of course we want to do more than that, more than just HTML with it. We want to be able to parse it. So let's look at the Beautiful Soup functions we can use. And there are many functions that we can use, but we are really interested mainly in 4 of them. The 4 that we're interested in are find all, get text, and get attribute. You can also navigate up and down your tree using these 4 functions: parents, children, and descendants, but we won't worry about those for our class here. We'll look at just these 4. What find does is it returns the first tag that matches a particular tag that you give it. So if you say find div, it's going to give the first div tag on a page. Find all will return all the tags that match. So if you say find all div, it's going to give you all the div tags in a list format. Actually a result set, but it's like a list. Get text returns the content, the actual text that is marked up. Remember, HTML is essentially a markup language that marks up pieces of text. So get text returns the text that's marked up, whatever text is enclosed inside the tag. So if you do a get text on an entire HTML page, it's going to return all the text that's on that page, right? If you do it on an inside tag, it'll return the text that's marked up inside the tag. And finally, get attribute returns the value of an attribute. This is particularly useful for the href attribute, because if you're looking for a link, then you find an a tag and get the href attribute value, and that will give you the next link that we are looking for. So let's take a look at how this works in practice.